Hey now, welcome to the dirty side of the track, America's leading Formula One podcast, and Happy New Year. And we're back. And it's me, Brian. I'm here with Rob, and we have a special guest this week. Special guest, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm that guy who used to do all those pit lane reports for the last couple of years. Now sadly unemployed and seeking benefits, which is quite nice. My teeth are a bit of a joke, so I'm thinking of donating them to Africa to save some more rhinos from getting poached. But apart from that, any job advice or any job help would be useful right now. But yeah, you know, McDonald's it is. If it's good enough for Donald Trump, it's good enough for me.
Welcome, Paul. How are you, man? It's great to talk to you. It's great to see you, even though I can't tell what you actually look like because half the time you have a filter on.
Yeah, it's been a tragic start to the meeting, because, well, I say meeting, I don't understand why on Zoom you should have the ability to give yourself dog ears or fluorescent pink lipstick as I had um earlier on. So yeah, it's not gone well. I don't want to be that guy who gets to this age and starts to struggle with technology. And we've all seen that the video of the guy in the courthouse, is it? Well, I'm not really a cat. I was a bit like that trying to remove
Oh,
this lipstick.
You were, Paul, and I've got to say, it certainly put a smile on our face where all of a sudden, for whatever reason, you managed to turn all the lights off in your house so that it all went pitch black, apart from the filter that still didn't realize the lights weren't on and just gave you fluorescent pink lips. And that is the best start to an episode of this podcast I think we've ever had.
Exactly.
So,
Happy 2025. There we go.
yeah, happy new season for us, season four on the dirty side. You say you've been doing this for a couple of 3 years. We're into this now, Paul. And
Is it 3 years? Wow.
yeah. So anyway, let's I know it's going to end in a not. We all know the ending. It's like watching the Titanic. You know the boat's going to sink. We know that this isn't. The season didn't end very well for you guys. But let's just pick the bones out of the season that was 2024. Eh? Me and Brian did our review last year. We kind of closed it out from a fan perspective and thought it was amazing, most epic thing ever. But as always, we loved the Pitlane Paul insights as to what was it like to be on the inside of that circus this year, and specifically for you probably and Valtteri, like kind of what's it like being in a team that, let's be brutally honest, didn't really turn up and play very often.
Yeah, that's an understatement, right there. Yeah, you probably have to refresh my memory on most of the races because the truth be told, I mean, I know I've touched on this several times and I've been on with you guys, but it's really, and I always say this, it's really hard to be motivated over a weekend when you have a car that's performing that badly. So yeah, I know Max won about the first 10 races and Lando and that then won the next 10, and so like it was a brilliant season. So yeah, it was good. I am going to be enthusiastic about it, and yeah, well, of course we'll delve into let's say the last 3 months of our lives, and yeah, I can talk a little bit on that. So let's go.
So let's go right back to the beginning a minute then. So um, Bahrain, beginning of the season. Do you turn? I don't want to start on a negative here, but do you turn up already knowing that the car probably isn't going to do much this season, or do you turn up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed at Bahrain, thinking, maybe we've got a chance at some points this year? What's it like first day of the season for you guys?
Well, yeah, I mean, look. Let's be realistic. We go to the car launch. That's the first time we actually see the car. Valtteri has data about it, so on and so forth. But the first time we actually see the car is the car launch, and it's never really, let's say, the proper car. So we knew it looked okay. Looks are never real. The car looked okay. And then yeah, we go and do a shakedown in Spain, go off to Bahrain, and then the thing with Bahrain testing is you're so limited on the data you receive from other teams. So I think I've said this before. You might have Williams, for instance, who are pushing for a new sponsor, so they'll just run the car, 300 kilos rather than the 700 and put no fuel on it and say go and do a quick lap, and then naturally they'll do a quick lap. So everyone will be, oh, Williams look really fast. So a sponsor will be like, oh yeah, we need to get on board with these. Then ultimately they go on um, to have a pretty, average car. So Bahrain testing it gives you a good idea of where you are, but you don't really ever fully know until you do the qualifying. So yeah, the long and short of that, yeah, look, we knew that we knew we weren't going to be competitive. Um, and you're in for a hard year, but that doesn't mean we're not going to score points, of course, which of course we'll go on to after the first few races. But yeah, like I said, if you could have the worst car in the world, look at Alpine, the way they started
Right.
to how they finished. You got to bear in mind Alpine had podiums this year. At the start of the year, they were 3 seconds off the pace. So. Yeah, of course. We do know in testing roughly where we are. We don't really know how it's going to pan out as the season goes on, of course. But yeah, you get an idea. That's in answer to your question. Yes, you get an idea, but you don't fully know.
In so one follow up to that, and then one other question. Like one of the things I was trying to figure out was year over year. Do teams ever look like based on last year's times? We're 8/10ths faster than last year, and you just don't know how much faster the other teams are, or do you not even use that data? Because the reason I ask is I kept trying to figure out the RB19, right? The Red Bull car from last year that dominated, the 23 car that dominated so much. In 24, they go to the RB20, and I'm sitting here thinking, why'd they get away from the same concept they had that was so good? And Rob kept telling me, we were guessing, it's like, oh, they must have maximized it. And it quickly became apparent that the 20, while not as dominant over the other cars, was faster than the 19 because you could look at the same track year over year and get a feel for it. So I don't know if like what kind of data you guys use in testing. If you don't have competitive data, do you check like year over year to say what was Sauber the year before, or check? And so that's my first question. And then the second question is, when did you know you had a problem with the wheel nuts?
Can you repeat that question again?
Well,
No, I
there's
got
7 parts to it.
Please, please don't. We're going
Let
to
me
run out
start
of
over with
time.
the 9 part question.
No, no, no. Do you know what? The problem you have, not the problem you have, is you talk about the evolution of a car. So you will have started designing like the following season's car sometimes towards the end of like a couple of seasons before. Like if you think by now the what are we 25 car is done. Every team's designed it, it's in production, it's being made. You know, this car will have been designed over the last 7 or 8 months. So if you I'm going to give McLaren is the greatest. Oh, let's say McLaren and Alpines is two, arguably the two biggest improvers this year throughout the season. They didn't start great, but they finished incredibly. Ferrari, you've probably got to run those in the same thing. But what you've done is you've probably worked all your basis of design on the start of the previous season.
Okay.
So McLaren have probably designed their car based on it being a little bit, if I can say it, not on the pace. That doesn't mean that they're going to have a car that's not on the pace for the following year. Who knows? So you can look at old times and they can be relevant, but also they're not massively relevant as well because you're always trying to improve. It's not the worst question in the world, to be honest with you. You are correct, but at the same time, I think you'd be foolish to look at your previous year's data and base it on what you've currently got. Because every team's trying to ultimately improve. Every team should, in theory, improve their car for the following season.
Right.
This season, we're going to have and this I might be skipping to a later question here. I think this season is going to be pretty dull. And the reason I say that is everyone's going to push towards a new reg change in 26. There's no point putting all your resource into a 25 car. You sort of know where you are. That's something we can come to later when maybe we look at 26. So, yeah, I would fully expect the start of this season from McLaren, Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes to be, again, the four quickest teams. Will they be in the order that they finish the championship? I don't know. And it's a good question. I think you're foolish looking at your times, but also not foolish looking at your times. You know what I mean?
I do. I do. That makes sense. Now, the most important
So,
question, the
oh
wheel
yeah, yeah, I was
nuts.
going.
When did you
The,
know that there was something wrong with the wheel nuts and that it was going to become a situation with the pit stops?
Well, in I don't know the ins and outs of it was a manufacturing batch issue with wheel nuts. And it's such a really unusual situation. And again, if you look at the part, I mean, we just spoke about this. If you look at the parts of the car you're going to change and all of the areas you need to improve the car in, the wheel nuts in your axles, in theory, shouldn't really be that much of a drain. So I don't know exactly the issue with the wheel nuts, but I do know that that should never happen. We were all really confused how the hell we got into a situation where we got issues with wheel nuts. And then, I mean, I can remember we were asking the question. They said, yeah, we're hoping to get it resolved in a couple of months' time. And you're like, well, you know, that's, I guess, the difference between a smaller team and a big team. If that's Mercedes, I guess stamped out pretty much straight away. Something as fundamental as a wheel nut failing was mind boggling. I couldn't get over it. I couldn't understand how we got into that situation. It can happen, you get stuff manufactured, made, machined, it comes to you. If there's an error, if there's a batch issue with those, that happens. That happens in every walk of life and everything we have. You see, for instance, that there'll be a frozen pizza recalled from some big supermarket because of and it's the same thing. Mistakes happen. But in something as critical as F1 and as critical and as minuscule as a wheel nut, why it kept happening there race after race? Um, I know they made some changes to their pit stop equipment, and and I'm not saying this actually happened with the team, but then you get the pit stop personnel who are taking it on themselves to then try and, they're under so much pressure on a pit stop. They're then making stupid mistakes. They're then not helping the situation. So you have this whole spiral of these things, and there was nothing. I mean, we talk about this team not scoring points. Um, Go back and have a look at the start of the year, how many opportunities this team had to score points, and we threw it away by pit stop issues. I
Yeah.
know we spoke about it. And the difference in championship finishing positions financially for a team is insane money. So for that to have gone on as long as it did, it was just and also, look, let's also congratulate that team because at the end of the year, they were having some of the fastest pit
Yeah.
stops.
Yep.
So, they did fix the situation. It's not that the guys are incapable of doing the pit stops. It was just it's so frustrating.
So you've been obviously amazing to us and brought Valtteri and got us Jack and really can never say thank you enough. And one thing Valtteri, we asked him was, if you're in the car and you make a mistake versus the team makes a mistake, how does it feel? And at the time, Valtteri said, it's so much worse when you, the driver, make the mistake because the team showed up for the whole thing. So that said, acknowledging he's, an amazing driver, an amazing person, someone who puts the pressure on himself, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being no big deal and 10 being, oh my God, I think my head's going to pop off. When he got out of the car after the first race with a 42-second pit stop, where was he? Was he a 9, a 10, an 8? Or is he like, well, we did what we could and it happened and he was a 2? Because he just seems like a very calm guy. I would have been a 47. But I'm just curious, how hard does Valtteri see something like that with his pit stops? He's like, well, the race is completely shot and nothing he could have done.
Where you might have the answer to this. I genuinely don't know. What position was he when that happened?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, it wasn't like you may have been at the bottom of the points or just outside.
Yeah, exactly.
It was one of the races at the beginning. It might not have been Bahrain. It was one of the long pit stop ones where I remember you writing in the notes, Brian, like Valtteri points, like, is this going to happen because he's
Potential.
lurking
Yep.
there? And then they both got screwed. I think both of
Mm.
them had like 25, 30-second pit
Well,
stops. And that's it.
Valtteri's
Race
yeah,
over, basically.
yeah, exactly.
In that situation, of course, as a driver, you're really, you are pretty peeved off in that situation.
Yeah.
That's a natural thing. But I would also say when you're down there, it doesn't hurt so much. I'm actually going to take you back to his famous pit stop in Monaco for Mercedes, and
Front right.
that was a whole different scenario because in reality, Valtteri couldn't maybe should have won that race. So to win Monaco and to have that issue. I'm not going to name names, but it was Tom, and he's one of my good mates, and you know, and to see his reaction afterwards. I mean, he's only a young kid, really. I worked with his dad there, and to see him, he was so emotionally ruined after that. And like I said, it was a mistake. It was a silly mistake what happened there. But actually, if you watch Valtteri when he gets out the car, Valtteri was probably your level 47 on that occasion. So as much as yeah, I mean the driver will go. I mean, you look at Max. I mean the
Yeah.
way Max, if they have a bad pit stop, I love Max. Like, I think he's great, but I think publicly slamming your team isn't the right way of doing that.
I agree.
Personally, that's my gut feeling. So yeah, I think in that situation, you've just got to be like, okay. I know we had one in Australia as well, didn't we? I remember the Australia one really well. And again, it was one of the mechanics, and he was so down and sad. And I remember Valtteri being really annoyed at that one too, because Australia's a big race for him.
Yeah.
Obviously he's there at the moment. So yeah, he was pretty mad after more so after Melbourne than Bahrain. So I think Bahrain first race, okay, there. But to happen, what's two races later? Yeah, 'cause it's Bahrain, Jeddah, Australia last year,
Yeah,
wasn't it? Yeah.
yeah.
So for that to happen then three races later and then not to fix the issue, then you see a more angry reaction from. And I think any driver, I wouldn't even, I'd like to think any driver would have that same
Right.
reaction, you know.
So just a quick question before we move on from wheel nut gate. Was it actually just the wheel nuts that because commentators weren't sure. They were all blaming is it the new funky gun they've got and it's cross-threading everything and that's why they're going slowly on all the pit stops because they're just taking their time to make sure because even after the issue was identified, the I think the following 3, 4, maybe even 5 races, the pit stops weren't great. They came down from the 30 seconds, but they were still like 8 or 9 seconds long because the team was just like taking their time. Literally just poorly manufactured wheel nuts was just the issue. And it took that long to be able to turn around to the manufacturer and go, oi, send us some new ones.
I think that they had new guns, and I mean I'm gonna come clean with you guys. By that point, I'd sort of just lost all faith anyway, so I didn't really ask too much about it, to be fair. But I know they had new guns, and they were an issue, and it was sort of like getting the guns to work with the wheel nuts. Again, I'm going to go back to what I made earlier on. It's a wheel nut. It shouldn't, you know what I mean? It's a
Yeah.
wheel gun and a wheel nut. It shouldn't, it should never have gone on for as long as it did. And I can't sit here and tell you the exact reasons why. I've got no right to. But if in any other walk of life that doesn't happen, and that was our frustration.
So we've probably gone on about the wheel guns longer than it took all the pit stops combined. So let's move on from that one. Now the other thing that was lurking at the beginning here, and obviously we've seen the end of the movie, so we know what happens all the way along. But right back at the beginning, we always had the big Lewis announcement, and Carlos wasn't going to be in the seat anymore, and Lewis was going over to Ferrari at the end of the season. First time I can remember that happening before a season started, like maybe forever of me watching F1. I don't remember silly season starting before the season even begins. It's always in the middle, as far as I'm concerned. A, is that true? B, how much did that even resonate on everyone's radar in the pit lane? Is it just one of those things and no one cares about it, or are all the things now start, or all the sort of silly season puzzle pieces starting to have to be kicked off early now because of what's just happened?
Well, oh God, this is a good one. So yeah, obviously that kicked off this huge. Lewis going to Ferrari is fantastic. I mean, for him personally, I think it's a brilliant move. And I think we've covered this one anyway till the cows come home. It's fantastic for him. Obviously, then you have the coveted seat at Mercedes, which is up for grabs. Um, I was, I'm still telling you Max will end up at Mercedes. Now whether that's the end of this year, I can say that now. Whether that's the end of this year, whatever. So Max going to Mercedes was a thing. With that in mind, Carlos now has got, and the thing with Carlos Sainz, he brings sponsorship, and I'm not gonna. He's a good driver. We know that. We're not knocking his driving. He's a good driver, but he brings sponsorship. He brings finance. So he's a really attractive person for a team. Um, You got Perez struggling at Red Bull. So Carlos is probably looking, thinking, okay, what's the next best seat I can take? Could be Mercedes, could be Red Bull. So there, they were two teams. Obviously, every team was involved. Alpine, Williams, needless to say. Um, Obviously, all the drivers are talking to everyone. We knew there was a potential opportunity at Williams. Alex Albon was really highly being targeted by Red Bull to go back there.
Really?
So, oh yeah. So I had so it was this huge, and it actually got quite boring in the end for this constant questions from the media all the time. It came down pretty much to if Carlos went, if Carlos didn't go, if Carlos was originally going to sign for Alpine, that was sort of a nailed on thing. Then is it Bruno Famine got ditched, which then cancelled that deal. Williams and James had basically said, "We need an answer off you now, Carlos, because if you're not, we're going to go with well, actually Valtteri. I'll be honest with you." So we was also holding out. Haas seat was also up for grabs. There was a lot of interest by Haas, and it kept going on and on and on and on and on so long, and all the teams were waiting. Everyone was waiting on Carlos Sainz, but doors then started closing. Esteban went to Haas. That door was closed. We knew the situation at Red Bull was what it was. Antonelli was widely tipped to come into Mercedes, which okay, it's something we can go on to later. There were all these weird things started happening. Then obviously Logan then got ditched, and Colapinto came in, who did a good job for the first couple of races, and then
Right.
like all of these kids, they realize it starts to get a little bit too much, and he starts making silly mistakes. And but Colapinto then was really widely then targeted to come into Red Bull into their program. And it really took until Carlos said, "Yes, I'm going to Williams," for everything then to close down. And when was that? That was what,
Oh, forever
October,
that
was
seemed
it?
to take.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So all of these seats were open and everything started closing. Jack Doohan, Briatore came in, who manages Jack. So Jack went into Alpine. That door closed. Ricciardo, which I still don't agree with it's AlphaTauri. Although you got to argue that Lawson's done a good job. He was also, though, well, can he go to Red Bull? And you got to bear in mind the Red Bull seat wasn't an option for anyone because they had Max and Checo. So it was a really weird time this year of the silly season. And even up to a month ago, we're still being asked if Valtteri is going to Red Bull. And you know what I mean? It was mad. And then for us, really, we were left with the dooming realization that our only option was going to be to stay with the stake team slash Audi, which yeah, obviously we know how that one goes. So silly season was ridiculous this year, but everyone was waiting on Carlos Sainz. Carlos actually made it quite interesting this year because yeah, I think some teams panicked and signed people up way too quick. Obviously, I've got to be biased. How a 10-time Grand Prix winner in Valtteri Bottas isn't on the grid next year is staggering. But that was an absolute end result of Carlos. Davis just here's right. I'm not criticism of him. I'm not
Right.
criticizing Carlos. It's not his problem. He was safe no matter what. But if Carlos would have made the decision sort of around the time when Lewis did, I think the driver lineup for next year would be ridiculously different than what it is this year.
That's
It's
wild.
crazy.
That
Yeah,
is.
that is really. It's also very sad. I mean, so at what point did and if you can't tell us, you can't tell us. But when did the Toto call or the reserve driver thing come out? Was that a last Hail Mary to keep him in and around the sport, or was that a backup option that had been on the table for months if he ever needed it?
Um, it's not a case I can't go into it really. I mean, like there was there obviously there was the talk from I just call them sober. So I don't know what they don't actually know what I still don't know what they're called. Um, the talk from sober was that we were fine. We were always going to be fine there. You know, the contract was pretty much done. Everything was rosy. We had no reason, in Bonotto kept assuring us everything was fine. So we had no reason to doubt him. It was only, it was Brazil when I first started to think I ain't sure here. And it was that late into the season where
Wow.
and it was like um the the conversation would have happened months before, I guess, for Valtteri. I mean, Toto's still part of his management team. Um, and again, you know, to have let's just quickly touch on Mercedes. They've signed Antonelli. I don't think anyone doubts the kid's talented. We know that. Do I think do I think it's a brilliant move? No, I am a little bit like there's a lot of pressure on this young kid to come into a team like Merck. It would almost be better, weirdly, for Carlos to go to Mercedes for a year, put Antonelli at Williams with an
Right.
agreement to swap over, or vice versa with Valtteri. Um, so yeah, look, it. I don't know. Let's be realistic. Let's hope Antonelli goes really well because I don't think anyone wishes anyone to do badly.
Yeah.
I definitely don't. To have Valtteri as a reserve driver at Mercedes to cover an eventuality where, let's say, Antonelli goes to pieces, which touch wood he doesn't. To have a driver of that experience sat alongside who can A, jump in, B, educate. Valtteri's very good also at, the job he did with Joe when Joe first started driving with us. The To have that level of experience, it was a no-brainer, really. So I would say that conversation would have happened a long time ago. That
Yeah.
okay, you can come back into this team as a reserve driver if that situation occurs.
I
So
didn't realize it was as late as. Sorry, Brian, to cut you there, but just one last thing on that. I didn't realize you were as late as Brazil before you were really kind of getting the inside track from Bonotto, that you wouldn't still be there because we get all the swirling media frenzy that happens on the outside with all the crap that gets thrown up. So I'm just kind of thinking on the inside, you guys have got a much clearer picture of your futures, and you're just not allowed to say anything. So therefore, media makes stuff up, and you have to stay quiet. But it was that late in the season,
Yeah,
and he
I mean,
still thinks
look,
he's going to be in stake next year.
yeah. So I mean, just to touch on that, it was Brazil, and I started to get lots of messages through, like we think Bortoletto's got this drive, and um, one of my friends who looks after an Australian driver, he was sort of like, look, I've heard pretty much that Bortoletto's got this drive. This is over Brazil race weekend. Um, I don't know if you remember, I went to Atlanta after the race in Brazil, and it was there where Valtteri got told. Not he wasn't with me, but it was the Monday after Brazil Grand Prix that Valtteri had the call from the team to say it's that they decided to go for Bortoleto. Um, out of all of the youngsters coming in, I know I will say this: out of all the youngsters coming in, I think Bortoleto is the one who is more deserving. And again, this isn't meant to detriment to any of the other drivers. I'd never be like that, but if you look at the F2 records of them all, Bortoleto won it. He was consistent. You got Paul Aaron, who I think's just started with Alpine as their reserve driver. He was chasing him runner up. Isaac Hajar, part of the Red Bull thing. So you got these three guys who really, by their performances, should be getting a better look in at F1. You've got Behrman, who, okay, he did okay in Jeddah. It was okay. It wasn't groundbreaking. Um, if you think Colapinto Williams when he came in, he wasn't really setting the world like. I might be wrong with this, by the way. I don't believe he was setting the world like in F2. So you don't know. All of this is a gamble, but yeah, it was as late as that for us to actually realize that. Yeah, Christ, Bortoletto's got this drive, and we knew we had the Mercedes thing to fall back on, but yeah, long and short of it, it was that late. Yeah.
I'm also surprised when you say it's that late. It felt this actually explains a lot of what we saw in the media when Valtteri came out and said, I wouldn't have signed there if I could go back in time, which felt like not a very Valtteri kind of way to phrase it. And then the other thing, something about, I'd been told I was part of the future. And so I didn't realize it. Like they had kind of said, yeah, we have a contract set, and it was sort of like you guys all going in the same direction, and then they kind of took a turn that late in the season.
I think if you look back when we signed, um, Fred was there. Um, that team was. Let's go about what? Oh, years 2020 2022. Yeah, 22 is our first year Alpha. We were the fourth quickest car in the first three or four races. We were we were chasing down George Russell in Imola. What was it, race 6, 7 for P4, P5 in that race? Which, if the race would have gone on for a couple more laps, we'd have got that. So I think we look at Ferrari now. Fred's clearly making a big difference there. So I think Fred leaving probably killed that dream a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the the Audi takeover is a very interesting one with them at the moment. Um, and if you look in the time we've been there, what have we had? We've had Fred. Um, oh, who was the other guy from McLaren who was there? That's really rude of me as well. I can't remember his name. Oh, who followed Fred into Sauber before Bonotto? Seidel.
Yeah, and
Oh
So
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So we had Fred, then we had Seidel who came in to run the Audi thing. Then they ended up getting rid of him and putting Bonotto in charge. So it was, it. I think Valtteri's comment came from, look, if we knew what was going to happen in the future, we wouldn't have gone there. And I think that's fair. But I would also say if you also look back at the start of 2022, that car was superb.
right.
I would say the small team mentality is you can't keep the pace of the big boys in terms of car development, which let us down. But then year after year, the car got worse and worse. I look at Hulkenberg, the year he's had with Haas. Okay, look, he's got the big shiny Audi thing looking at him now, but I also think with Nico, he's probably thinking that he's made a mistake here. Looking at how Haas finished and looking at how, you know, Sober have performed in let's say the last 18 months, because it's not fair to say the last 3 years, because,
Yeah,
they are a good team. Um, Definitely in the last 18 months, I don't see next year that car being any better than this year. I actually see it being worse because they're just going to push their resources into the Audi project now for the Audi
right.
car.
So they're going to
So
look at 26, the 25, kind of like Haas did with the 21 team when the reg changes for 22. They kind of just gave away a year to some extent. I mean, not I'm oversimplifying it, but it's just you're not going to
no, wait, I
see
think you're
improvement.
right. Yeah, I think you're right. But again, then you have a contract situation that we're in, whereas Valtteri wanted to be part of the Audi project. So offering him a 1 year deal for, let's say, 25 wasn't really that, it wasn't overly, there wasn't a big carrot being dangled there for him, because
Right.
I think nobody expects that car to be anywhere near decent next season. And look, they are not. I'm not going to sit here and blade sober. I think they're a great team. They have fantastic people there, and they work hard. They probably work harder than some teams in there. For whatever reason, it doesn't work for them. I don't know. But I also, hand on heart, cannot see possibly how that car can be any better next year. And
Yeah.
based on that, I just think, like, if they were if they would have come, I didn't really know what the deals were being offered, but if they said to VB, look, you can have a 1 year contract, oh God, the better option would have been to go and be Mercedes reserve driver. Why kill your motivation by going and sitting in that team for a year and run around at the back and you know
So just on that one, because I have absolutely no real insight. I'm sure you do. What will Valtteri's year look like next
Yeah.
year? What
Same question I
are
was
the
going to ask.
duties? Okay, what are the duties of kind of the reserve driver, and then maybe just to do a Brian and kind of ask a question that goes on forever. What? um,
well, I answer them forever, so like,
yeah,
feel
yeah,
free, mate.
that's
That's
true.
why we
You
get
two as
along
bad
so
as
well. That and all
you
the
two as
beer.
bad as each other, yeah. But the oh, no, now you throw me. No, okay. Um, What option will he have of like same way Danny Rick came in and out from the wilderness one year? He'd been the Red Bull PR guy for a year, then suddenly he's back in a seat. There's a lot of rookies you've already mentioned on the grid this year. If any one of them from ever any team drop off, do you think Valtteri is kind of a an attractive proposition to bring into a team, or is he set for Mercedes? So there you go. There's my Brian Long question.
Uh, no, it's a good question. I obviously, needless to say, I can't go into the contracts because, yeah, you're running into all confidentiality things with that. So
Boo.
I've got to put my, yeah, I know, but I've got to be diplomatic in my answer.
I
Look,
know.
um, your duties as reserve driver, there's simulator work, there's test days, there's car development. Um, being at the races, engineering meetings. Again, it's a man who has a ton of experience. If you look at the experience he has, even with Mercedes. So in terms of other teams, look, maybe, maybe it's going to be my answer. And the reason maybe is my answer is I don't. There are a lot of rookies. Oliver Behrman. I can't. I can't see failing. Is Behrman world class? No, but he's had a few races now. He's performed well. Fair play to him. You can't knock that. Bortoletto, I think, so. He's the F2 champion. As I've just mentioned before, he deserves his seat fully in F1. I always believe if you win the F2 championship, your natural progression should be into F1. So, and Kimi Antonelli, he's going to have Valtteri sat with him, mentoring him, going through everything. So, do I see a situation where a race seat emerges throughout this year? No, I honestly don't. Because even if there's a massive, I mean, Red Bull are, let's be fair, our favorite team at making random driver changes. I've just mentioned Isaac Hadjar. He's just going to come into the Red Bull program, you know? So I I can't see for next year. What I see happening next year, if I've got to be honest with you, will be I just guess I've got nothing to back this up, but Alonso probably retiring. George Russell will move to Aston Martin because he's going to be the British poster boy. And then Max Verstappen will sign for Mercedes. As I mentioned, that's just my gut feeling about what will happen next year. So even in terms of those driver movements, there's not really a drive opening. What we need is maybe an 11th team coming into F1 or something, which would be an exciting proposition for any driver with a lot of experience.
There you go.
That's exactly where I was going to go and ask, and I'm sure you're probably not allowed to say if anything's happened on that front. So,
No, look, I mean, look, it's obviously Cadillac are coming in. Um, there is going to be a lot of people, a lot of interest in that seat. Are they going to want an American driver? Are they going to want someone who's super experienced? There's no guarantee on anything. The
no,
only guarantee, I think they've just signed Ferrari engines until they get their own engine up and
yeah,
running, which it's of course it's an exciting project. It's something which excites me. Graham, who's running the team, Graham's a really good close friend of mine. Obviously, he looked after Joe, is his manager. So I was sat with Graham most days and sometimes most nights in bars as well. So that is, and they're also based at Silverstone, which is as we know before, 5 minutes up the road from my house. So I personally, I hope to try and help them in some capacity. And yeah, obviously for a team like that, it's someone like Valtteri who's almost a free agent. Same with Daniel Ricciardo. They have to look at these guys. You're going to
yeah.
need someone with experience. You almost have to. How that works with contracts with Mercedes, that time will tell. But yeah, of course, 11th team is it's super exciting for the sport. It should have, the Andretti. It's still the Andretti project. It's
It
not
is.
anything different from the Andretti project. Why it's taken this long for that to be approved, I think I've said before, is ludicrous.
Yeah,
But
because I
no, it's
mean
happening.
they let Brad Pitt's team into the grid quick
Yeah,
enough. So
exactly. Yeah,
like,
yeah. But no, that's the thing, and it's super exciting. I it could be. I think I've said before. I think this year is going to be really rubbish, if I'm being honest. I hope I'm wrong, but I think the
Well,
emergence of Cadillac coming in could be quite exciting to see what where they go, who they hire, who goes where, so on and so forth. So yeah, that's mega exciting.
so you're looking forward to 26, right? You're talking about the new regs, new team. You're talking about movement of the drivers, and you also, it sounds as though in your mind, 25 will be kind of like, I don't want to say playing out the string to some extent of these regs, of these seats, of these approaches. But it kind of feels that way in the way you're saying it. As an outsider, as a fan, I think the thing that I'm excited about is it feels like we've reached that level at the end of the regulations where some cars are kind of reaching similar spots. So, like you say, the top four, you got Red Bull, you got Mercedes, you got Ferrari, you got McLaren, and you don't know necessarily who's going to win each week. That, as a fan, is super exciting to kind of see. Do you see that continuing in 25? Do you see some of that, those kind of groups where you have, Haas and Alpine, and our racing bulls? I had to remember their name. They were battling, and then you had Aston Martin kind of in that pack too towards the end of the season. I'm just kind of curious. Do you see good racing in 25, even if you don't see a lot of movement in terms of progression of development?
Yeah, again, yeah, I honestly do. I would. I think it's going to be. When I say I think it's going to be a poor year, you're not going to see. You know, I think I wouldn't be surprised if they finish the constructors' championship in roughly the same positions. That makes some bizarre logic. What I'm saying there, because they're going to. I know I'm going to contradict what I've said earlier on, but they're just going to sort of continue where they left off. A lot of them. I know the cars are designed, but they're going to know what worked at the end of the year. What they, you know, Red Bull are going to want to not finish third. They finished third.
Third.
Yeah,
Yeah,
third.
they're not going to want to finish third. Mercedes are not going to want to finish fourth. McLaren and Ferrari will want to, battle out for a championship. So it is going to be good. I just don't see, I don't see all of a sudden the team making a massive step up like we see before. Just my gut feeling. I could be completely wrong. I hope I am. Look, I really hope I am. But I think a
But let's
lot of
just
teams are going to focus on 26.
so on that point then, and I think this is kind of the point Brian's making. From your point, it's going to be disappointing that maybe a team isn't going to make a big leap. From our point, if we get more of the same of how this season ended and we don't have, say, a Max dominating
Yeah.
the first 5, 6, 7, 8 races of a season, in terms of the Drivers' Championship next year, it could be one of the most epically close across like 4, 5, 6 drivers almost. If you looked at, Max, Lando, Oscar, Lewis, Charles, I mean, just we could have an absolute epic world drivers. And if nobody spends any money on really wanting to bring up big upgrades because they're all looking at 2026 and the cars kind of just get frozen in time for a year, I think we'll be really happy.
No, to be honest, when you just said that about the Drivers' Championship as well, actually, yeah, I mean, I won't lie, I didn't even consider that as an option because I don't know, I just think like we've been so used to a driver just winning championships year after year after year. I just sort of write the Drivers' Championship off. I think you're absolutely correct there, Rob, to be honest with you. Whereas, yeah, I think if we do end up the start of this year is how last year ended, and then you've got any one of 4 or 5 drivers that can win a race. Yeah, actually, yeah, I could be talking absolute garbage here. Next year could be epic.
No, no.
Actually,
I think we're looking at it differently, right? You're the insider who's knowledgeable and taking the long-term view. We are the outsiders who are idiots, but we just look at what happens on a week-to-week basis. And for that, I think it'll be good to the point I was making. Rob making it will be good in 25. We hope. We hope.
no,
We
I
hope.
think I think you're right. No, that's what I'm saying. I think yeah, I think I'm looking at it more as a oh God, yeah, that should roll on to 26. No one's going to really be pushing. But I think, yeah, I've sort of almost disregarded the Drivers' Championship, almost just thinking, well, Max will win it again. And actually, I don't think he will. You know what I mean? And
Well,
yeah, I haven't even considered the actual individual Drivers' Championship in any part of the conversation we've been having for the last 30 odd minutes.
and as you say, Max is supremely talented, but he dragged that Red Bull around at the end of the season, trying to hold on to second places when he could, and the win that he got here or there. It was always like he didn't have the best car, and
No.
so he was doing what he could to hang on to points, and it was pretty cool. Paul, I got a question. I got a follow up for you on these topics before we kind of do any other recaps or questions. And I don't know how to ask this, so I'm just going to ask it. So, does that mean when Valtteri's a reserve driver and your jokes at the beginning, are you not working for him now? Like, I don't understand. So you literally are not working for Valtteri this season. Do reserve drivers need to be looked after, as you use the term?
Um, I will be continuing in Valtteri, yes, is the long and short answer. How how that looks in terms of race weekends, I don't know. I don't need to be at every look. I know the one thing is I don't need to be at every race weekend. That is music to my ears. Um, because I know that sounds really mad. But just you know, I'm going out to Australia in a few weeks to meet up with EB. We have his bike race going on over there, so going to help out a little bit with that. And we plan to really sit down and speak then. At the end of the year, again, we're looking at the end of the year. So Brazil, we sort of found out we weren't going to be racing in 25. So we only had Vegas, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi. Then his longtime trainer, Antti, is gone as well. Anti's got his own projects going on. That was, that's really sad. Anti's been with him all the time, so it didn't really feel right to discuss what's going on with the future at that time. I did sort of know that I was going to be continuing with him. Once we got towards the end of the year. Exactly how it looks in answer to your question, I don't know. I will be going out to a few of the races for sure. We got Race of Champions in Sydney the week before the Australian Grand Prix, so I'll be there for that. Hopefully, then continue to Melbourne and be there for Melbourne. And then onwards, who knows? And it's something I need to discuss with him. But yes, there is that. There's lots of other projects going on as well. Like I've said, the Cadillac thing is interesting. Nothing's happening there yet at the moment, but it's a conversation I will have. A new team starting up. I've got decent experience in the sport, so
You've
again,
knocked around the sport a few years, haven't you?
yeah,
So,
exactly. I'm
Been in and around the paddock.
sort of hoping something can happen there, but I think also at the end of the year, I wasn't going to worry about it. I just,
Yeah.
we were so relieved to get the season finished, so relieved to. I mean, you got to bear in mind it's less than a month ago that the season finished. We're only on the 4th of Jan. I flew home. Well, last race was the 8th of December. You know, Seems like an eternity ago. We've had Christmas and New Year. So yeah, I think next week is when I'm just going to sit down and be like, okay, well, I need to figure out 25, 26, but I'm
so
not worried.
good to hear.
Good.
So,
Great to hear.
not at every race weekend. That will mean that 2025's end of year travel graphic that you do will probably be nowhere near. What was your total mileage done? I always look forward to your yearly thing where you drop it on Instagram with your little flights around. Just remind
Ooh,
everybody what was your annual mileage for 2024,
I've got no idea.
roughly? Oh, come
No
on.
idea.
I'm gonna have to go and look it up on your post in a minute. It's some insane amount of air miles. I mean, if you're not at the top of some kind of flight reward system, something's wrong.
Yeah, no, I do quite well with a flight reward system. What? I don't know. That's a genuinely very good question. I just don't know. I just don't know. Well, I don't know. I'm trying to pluck a number out of my head even, but I honestly don't know.
Well, Brian's going to ask you a question while Brian's talking to you. I'm going to look up your
Yeah,
Instagram
please.
story
No,
and
please.
see
I just
see
tried
what
to
it
have a look on
was.
my phone. I couldn't find it. I was trying to see if I could find it quickly, and I couldn't. So please do.
Well, I have a question in 9 parts. No, I'm just kidding. So
My answer will be in 15. So let's go. By the time we've done that, I'll be able to do my 25 annual mileage. So yeah.
exactly. I was gonna joke and say, regardless of how often you're at a race or whatnot, you'll always be welcome to be Pitlane Paul here because you are the absolute man. And if you should find yourself needing to show up to Canada for work for any reason, Rob and I are still trying to get there. We have tickets. We haven't figured out how we're gonna make the stay happen, and my wife's kind of telling me I may need to sell my ticket, Rob, so I'm trying to hang on to it because anyway, it's money, baby. You got college, to figure out, but we'll figure
Yeah,
that out.
look,
So
we
regardless
can
of that, yeah,
we can still do in terms of race reviews and so on.
yeah.
I'm sure there's some way we can keep that rolling on. I enjoy doing it, even if sometimes I don't sound like it. So yeah,
And I
I'll
was going to
probably,
volunteer if you need any good American slang phrases, if you need to talk with the Cadillac team at all, just let me. I know no one on there is necessarily American, but just holler at your boy Sap. I can hook you up with some good stuff.
yeah, well, that's good to know. It's good to know
Yeah,
some of
there
that
you go.
Chicago town talk. I like it. Right then,
In
Rob, what you got? How many miles?
Indianapolis, not far
Pretty
away.
well. I now I'll have to do
True.
because you did it in kilometers bizarrely, which you didn't put miles on there, but 316,469 kilometers done in 2024. That's insane.
It's not bad, is it?
Not bad. It's a Laura miles. That's just
Uh, yeah, it's quite gnarly actually. Yeah, it's a long time sat on planes. But look, um,
sat on planes. You're in lie down beds with people fanning you and serving you champagne. We
yeah,
know.
it's not too bad. I won't lie. I do reap some good benefits on that front, of course. But um, yeah, no, it is good. Like, and yeah, air miles. I know me and Sat were talking about air miles on, can't remember when, but yeah, collected. Anyone who travels a lot who doesn't collect air miles, you are an idiot. You need to because the tier upgrades and the bonuses and benefits you get. And as someone who travels as much as I do, trust me, it can make the world of difference.
Paul, when you look back on 24, when you look back on that season, and obviously you're looking back on it through Valtteri Sauber glasses. Any highlights that stood out, like positives, negatives?
The
You
flight
know,
home from Abu Dhabi, yeah.
The problem is he's looking at it through Sauber glasses, so they weren't manufactured properly, so the lenses are solid and he can't see
Oh
anything.
God.
can't take them off. But like
Um,
highs or lows, things that you look back now and say that was, a really a powerful memory from the season.
um, the easy one, the boring answer is going to be the team is a positive. And as much as it did get me down at times, I cannot complain at the staff and in the race team at Sober. They probably have got the worst conditions to do anything with in the pit lane in terms of finances and the way that they operate. They turn up every week. They try their best. They care. Um, and as a bunch of people, I couldn't. I really want them to do well. I mean, we could talk about Qatar in a bit if you want to, but when they scored the point with Joe, it was like seeing the relief on them, see how happy they were. You could tell they care. And like I said, things don't always work out. It's sport. It doesn't matter what you do. Me and Rob are going to watch the football in a minute, and it might be that Arsenal don't win as much as they probably should win. And there'll be people who get down and sad and moody about it. And that's sport, It's in sport, it doesn't always go your way. So, um, as a team, yeah, they were a real positive because they kept my spirits up.
That's
As a
great.
negative for the year, it's the obvious one, really. It's just it was so bad in the end, you know. And only in the last few races the car finally got a little bit of performance, which is quite nice. But up till that point, it was as bad as I've ever known anything in motorsport. I've never had a season like that. I've never known a car like that. Um, so yeah, the positive are the people working on it. Fantastic, love them. Wish them all the best. The negative is the car they gave us. It was a glorified tractor, and even that tractor, the wheel nuts didn't do up. So yeah.
Oh man, well said.
I'm not sure how we follow that one up, but yeah. Um, yeah, you're right. We got like 30 minutes before kickoff in the Arsenal game, so could change my mood massively. But anyway, staying on Formula One. Um, where did I want to ask? We kind of looked at kind of the highs and lows and talked about Cadillac 26. Happy to hear that you've got a job then for next year and you're not going to be going to McDonald's because I'm not sure I'd eat at McDonald's that you'd serve, to be honest. I'm just not
Uh,
feeling the love
I
for it there.
can I be honest? I can't. I got a real small mouth and massive teeth, right? So like, eating a Big Mac is a genuine challenge, and like I always order. I'm my own idiot. I always order a Big Mac, but I sort of know I can't eat it. I've gone to double, quarter pounder one. But the way that sometimes they present a Big Mac, you look on a picture and it looks perfect, and sometimes it literally looks like someone has just thrown this
Right.
crap into a box, and you're like. I think I'd bring a touch of flair to the way a Big Mac is served in McDonald's, actually, to be honest with
Yeah,
you. And
maybe you would. Maybe you would. Maybe
I,
you would.
I could see you getting
So,
kind of punchy at the end of your shift, though, and just having the burger on the outside of the bun or something like that, just going a little crazy.
yes, I mean some of the customers I see in McDonald's as well. I think I that would test my patience on people. But I mean that's for another. This is for the dirty side of the fast food chain podcast, which
yes,
we're
let me
going to
get back to
follow
where
up
I
on.
was going, which was to put you on the spot for a couple of predictions for next season. Okay. Um, so the first one, you already said you're thrilled to see him there. Lewis at Ferrari. Okay. Two questions. Does he outperform Charles? I guess almost you have to say yes to the second one, which would be, is he in with a shot for the Drivers' Championship? Go.
I am going to say that it's going to be very, very hard to beat somebody who's been in the team that long and is used to driving that car. And especially going back to what I was saying is I don't expect there to be a huge change in the cars for this year. So, um, do I expect him to beat Charles? I would say I don't actually. I was going to try and go around, but I don't, to be honest with you. I think, Charles will have the experience of driving that car. I think Lewis for 26 is a lot more exciting. Um, but do I think Lewis has got a chance at the drive? Yeah, I think he really has. Because I mean, the one thing with Lewis is if he can be consistent. I know this year he's been as consistent as custard, but like he is like he when he's got a car that's working for him, he'll always do a job. It'll always perform to one level. He's one of probably the most consistent drivers on that grid. So if the car is good, yeah, I can see him challenging. Will he beat Charles? I'm going to say no, but it's Lewis Hamilton. The guy's a freak. He can do, of course, and a
That's a
So,
freak,
big
a freak,
compliment
a
there. The
freak in
guy's
the
a freak.
nicest way. Yeah,
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 a
yeah.
freak in the
a
nicest way, by the way.
talented,
Yeah,
talented,
yeah.
talented man. So then another team with two very, well, potentially from the outside, similar talented drivers, but different experiences, Lando and Oscar at McLaren. Oscar, in my humble opinion, took a massive step up from the season prior, and he just seems to have an endless supply of talent. He just needs to keep learning. And Lando, you can say what you like about his ability to lose places on the first lap of races. He's become a better qualifier than he had been, and he's now learning, at least we would hope, how to battle for wins. Who wins the 25 season at McLaren more points? Is it Oscar or is it Lando?
I think you'd be foolish to not say Lando. Um, However, I don't know. I mean, I think Oscar had a fantastic year, but he also there were some moments with him where for whatever reason, whether I mean they both made mistakes, didn't they, at times, I guess. You'd have to say Lando. But again, I'm with you. I think Oscar out of the next, I can't we can't necessarily call him a young driver anymore. He's into what, his third season,
Yeah, it'll
fourth
be his
season,
third
third
season. Yeah.
season. Yeah, he's relatively experienced now, and next season I would expect him to be challenging a lot more. This year I can slightly let him off. That car was an average car that went to being the best car out there. Did he utilize that fully? I don't think he did. Um, I think I think with him there was a bit of a drag of the drivers' championship, and then obviously we had the battles between him and Lando, and then while Oscar was still in for a fight in the championships, whether then he was trying too hard or over committing himself. Um, it'll be interesting. I think you're foolish not to say Lando, but Oscar. I think will have a much, much better year next year.
My last one on next season drivers is, again, I'm on the outside, obviously, as is Rob, but the whole Jack Doohan thing with Flavio and the approach, I have heard nothing that makes it sound like he has a guarantee that he'll be driving at the last race of the season next year. Do you think Jack has the hottest seat in F1 next season?
Such a good question. Um,
Given the way you have your head in your hands.
no, because I get on really well with Jack, and I think what I'm going to revert back to is the comment I made about the F2 drivers. You've got Paul Arundel, who finished runner-up or third. Third, it wasn't in the F2 championship. Jack didn't drive at all last year. So I think he's under a lot of pressure. And like he had the last race of the season, which again I didn't necessarily agree with. You cannot judge him on that. You can't judge a guy coming in to do a race weekend. So he didn't do terribly, but he didn't do brilliantly. So I I don't know. I'm going to be honest with you. You're going to say the hottest seat in F1. Mine was an easy one, and that's Lawson at Red Bull. I think is
Ooh,
mental. And
okay.
Red Bull never do anything with it. I think their support for their younger drivers isn't brilliant. Um, if you look, Albon, Gasly, I mean, they've had a whole Kvyat. They've had a whole load of these drivers have gone to try to partner Max and have all sort of like fallen away. So I think, I think he's under a lot more pressure. I would have took Yuki in that seat personally.
Right.
I think having a little bit more experience, but again, which it's not. That's not to say he isn't going to do a job. I think Jack is going to struggle next year, and I think he will get better. I think Alpine are a team that will allow him to get better and allow him to improve. Um, whereas I think Red Bull are a team that are fighting for a constructors' championship, and I think they will quickly want their other driver to step up. So I really hope Liam does do a great job there. But as we've seen with Sergio and Kvyat and Albon and Gasly, if it ain't going well for you at Red
Checo.
Bull, yeah, that's what I mean. If it ain't going well for you at Red Bull,
I,
they are very quick to swap you out.
I just want to say I agree with you on the Liam thing. That's well said. I've made a lot of new F1 friends around here, and I was in the parking lot the other day somewhere, freezing my cojones off, and we got into a debate, someone and I, why Yuki didn't get the seat and what else he could have done to have proven it. And I mean, it just didn't make a ton of sense. And Rob and I, even, I think, on one of these, when we said Liam would get the seat, but we didn't agree with it necessarily. I mean, it'll be fascinating. I hadn't thought of it that way. You're right.
It's
They don't have a ton of patience, and they expect something from that seat, and he's not going to be able to, I don't think, challenge Max. So it'll be fascinating to see where he finishes and what the difference is to what Sergio would have done.
Well, that's also looking without anything to back this up. I've just mentioned that I fully expect Max to go to Mercedes at the end of the year. So Red Bull are really going to be missing. Let's say a star driver. They've had Seb Vettel, they've had obviously Max, world
Danny
champions. All of a
Rick.
sudden, yeah, all of a sudden they don't have this big pull of a driver all of a sudden. So is Liam is Liam the guy? It's an interesting one. I don't know. I'm fascinated. I think yeah, Liam Lawson and Jack Doohan are the two guys I fully expect to have a whole heap of pressure on them. But I would
yeah.
expect Alpine to deal with Jack a lot better than I expect Red Bull. His style, and again, they might change, but I would expect his Red Bull to treat that situation a lot worse than what Alpine will.
So one last question on next year, because you just said one of your predictions was Fernando to retire this year, right? So, and you've also said that you don't see any teams making any big leaps this year. So, is the Nui factor going to be a nothing burger because he won't really have that much hand in a design, or will any input that he does have be the 26 car? So, Fernando will never get to drive a Nui car. That's one thing I hadn't thought of when you mentioned the Fernando retirement earlier on, and we were looking forward to next year. We do have the Nui factor over at Aston Martin. So,
But I don't think Newey hasn't. So when's his gardening leave?
I
as
don't
they call it. Do
know.
you have gardening leave? Do you have gardening leave over US?
Yeah,
Is there a thing?
yeah, it is. It's
Yeah.
not commonly discussed like a non-compete is what we often
Yeah.
kind of call it.
Yeah,
So
okay. Okay, so yeah, I think he's until the middle of the year.
Oh, okay.
So I
oh,
for sure he'll have some input on this year's car, but also I fully expect him to be much more involved in the 26 car than this year. And I don't know, I've got nothing to back up Alonso. I'm just thinking age, going into new regulations, you know, if Max does go to Mercedes, George Russell has to be out. You're going to have a very good driver who's going to be loose on the market again. Um, and Aston Martin, he's almost their James Bond figure, isn't he, George? He's got that, you know what I mean, though? He's got that about him. So, like I said, it's just a gut feeling I have. I've got
Yeah.
nothing to back it up, nothing at all. It's
I
just a
mean,
gut feeling.
from all my years of being a Formula One driver, I would stick around, I think, just to see if Newey does have his hands in the 2026 car design. Um, I think an Alonso gives it 1 year because if he rolls the dice and Aston Martin come out of the gate and do a Brawn GP almost where they just nail the new regs straight out of the gate and Alonso can get a driver's championship and then light a cigar and float off into the distance, it's fantastic. If they don't nail it and he's not that competitive, then he retires anyway and there's no harm, no foul. That's my gut feel.
Maybe, maybe, but then you have, I don't know. I don't know. I think for me saying I think 25 is going to be a real boring year. I've sort of gone after this podcast. I think I'm going full circle on that comment now because the driver championship is going to be fascinating. I think the driver market is going to be quite interesting. None of this might happen, by the way. The drivers might all just sit exactly where they are and there's no movement at all. And we're like, oh, okay, well, it could be the worst prediction I've ever come up with. Again, I don't want to drag on about fantasy F1 tables, but as we know in that, I'm probably not the greatest person to act as a team principal, that's for sure.
Well, you might not be the greatest person to act as a team principal, but you're definitely the greatest person to ever hold the mantle of Pitlane Paul. So that's something you can always be
Oh yeah,
proud of.
that's true.
Oh man, well, I think I'm all out of questions, Brian. I've kind of drained what I had for PLP. There we go. That's his acronym.
that is. I have too. Paul, anything you'd like to say, or do you want to close us out this week, my friend?
Um, no, I mean, look, it's very sad to not be so involved in the sport next year. But I believe in terms of what we're doing is it's actually a positive. You have to think positively in life anyway, and I think that's always a thing to do. So, yeah, whereas it does suck, we're not going to be driving. I think driving around in that sober for 1 year will be atrocious. So, um, it's a positive thing, and I think if you stay positive and everything's positive around you, then positive things will happen. And let's see what happens this year. I think it's going to be good fun. It's going to be a good year, good season, and we'll have plenty of hay nos, that's for sure. But
Plenty of
I'm
hell,
looking forward to it, that's for sure.
plenty of time for Valtteri to make a repeat appearance as well, because he's not under as much pressure to drive. I mean, come on.
Yeah, but we need money now, so unless you're going to pay us a fee to come on now,
Like we've always offered to split all the revenue with you.
yeah, exactly.
So 0 divided by 3.
Yeah,
Paul, thank you. What I'm positive about is this was an awesome conversation, and we really do, as Rob said, you'll always be our pit lane, Paul, whether you're in the pit lane each week or not. And I appreciate you a ton, my friend. And thank you for this conversation. Thank you to everybody who listened. Happy New Year. I hope everyone's staying nice and warm wherever you may be. And we'll talk to you in 1 week's time. Thanks, Paul, man.
take care, guys. Thank you.